Maybe you shouldn't listen to this podcast episode if you like eating snails, because today we're speaking about fast food. You'll learn some vocabulary connected to fast food, and we'll tell you what we think about it. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hi, I'm Reza.
And my name's Craig.
And with 50 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are things, Craig?
Things are really good. I'm excited to be podcasting with you again this week. And because we're talking about fast food, I'm really looking forward to trying the new chocolate biscuits today. So that's pretty fast food, isn't it? Chocolate biscuits.
Yes, and they will be eaten very fast if I know Craig and if I know myself. Yes, we're going to try some Vietnamese chocolate biscuits, which Craig has bought. I'd never heard of such a thing before. I think of many delicious types of food when I think of Vietnam, but I must admit, I hadn't reckoned on biscuits. Had you, Craig?
No, but I will probably eat them quickly, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's fast food, and that's what we're going to focus on today. However, just so that you know, especially if you're a new listener, and welcome to the podcast if you are a new listener, we have spoken about food before, haven't we, Reza?
Yes, of course we have, because it's one of our favorite topics. We like talking about it. We like looking at it. Above all, we like eating it. Yes, we have. If you're interested in that lesson, you could go to inglespodcast.com/341. That's episode 341. And we recorded there an episode called New Food Sources.
It's like insects and things like that, isn't it?
Yeah, weird stuff. Don't worry, no weird stuff today.
We've also recorded an episode in which we spoke about Spanish food specifically, but from a British perspective. So as British people, what we think about Spanish food, that's episode 299. So again, inglespodcast.com/299. And Reza, do you remember the episode on cooking vocabulary? That was a long time ago now, but do you remember the episode number?
I do remember that because I really enjoyed that. One of my favorite topics, as I said. That was episode 142. So again, you just type in inglespodcast.com/142, the episode number 142. And that one was called Cooking Vocabulary and Our Favorite Food. So there's 3 episodes that we've already made about food. This is a 4th, and I have a feeling there'll be more.
Yeah, I think that we'll probably be talking about food quite a bit in the future. But today it's fast food. Now, before we begin with some vocabulary for you to expand your vocabulary, let's try to define and describe exactly what fast food is and what's slow food. What do you think?
Well, I looked into this and it confirmed my suspicions that people don't agree. There's no exact definition of fast food. You would think, okay, it's food that is made fast or eaten fast. Not necessarily. Some fast food, so-called fast food. So-called means you call it that, but maybe it's not true. So-called fast food actually takes quite a long time to prepare. So I'm not exactly sure what my definition would be, but I identify it with easy to eat. So it may not be that fast to prepare, and it may not be that fast to eat, but it's always convenient, isn't it? It's not going to be like a 3-course meal, or it's not going to be a really elaborate dish with lots of ingredients. Would you agree about that?
I would agree, and I didn't look into it as much as you did, but my first impression would be, yes, something that you eat when you don't have much time. Now, there's another expression which is junk food, and the difference between junk food and fast food, I think, is that junk food, junk mail. If you have emails that go into the junk mail folder, it's rubbish. It's not good for you. So junk food, in my opinion, is low in nutritional value. The food doesn't have a lot of nutrients and it's not good for you. Although fast food could be healthy. And you mentioned slow food being a 3-course meal. I would use the expression as well to have a sit-down meal, because the implication of a sit-down meal, you have time, you can browse the menu, which means look slowly and consider what you're going to eat, and it's a very slow, enjoyable process in an atmospheric place. But fast food will be the opposite, where you don't have time, you eat something quickly because you have to continue to do something else after.
Yes, and although obviously, well, I think it's obvious, slow food existed before fast food, or it's more traditional, the term slow food came much later. What people before just called having a meal is perhaps now what you might call slow food. So the term fast food was invented in the 20th century, and then it was only years later when people started thinking about the pros and cons, the positives and negatives of fast food, that they started to talk about slow food. And in fact, there was a movement created as a kind of reaction against fast food. And above all, they started talking about, don't eat fast food, eat slow food. Take your time, eat properly, it's important. So very often slow food's identified with that philosophy as well.
Right, that makes sense. So let's look at some vocabulary connected to fast food. And one thing that comes to mind is takeaway. Now, takeaway could be a noun. You can have a takeaway, a phrasal noun, or it could be a phrasal verb, to take away food. Now, that's very, very common in British English. In American English, you may hear take out. Let's have some takeout as the noun, or carry out, because you're carrying the food out of the place, the restaurant. Or you could just say, can I have the food to go? And if you say to go, that means you're going away with it. You're not eating it in the restaurant.
Craig, would you, when you're in England, ever use the term carry out?
No, I would say takeaway.
In Belfast, people do a lot.
Really?
Yeah, some people say takeaway, but plenty of people say carry out.
Oh, interesting.
I guess we got that from American English.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Now, with takeaway, it's often preceded with the type of food that you are taking away or eating. For example, an Indian takeaway or a Chinese takeaway. Those are the most common. Isn't it interesting? I was thinking, coming over here, we're recording today in Reza's flat, I was thinking on the bus that you don't often hear the expression a Japanese takeaway or an Italian takeaway. But you do hear very commonly Chinese takeaway, Indian takeaway. What other collocations are there? Greek takeaway?
No.
Not so much.
Although, of course, people do take away a Greek dish, which is kebab.
Yes.
By the way, but we don't talk about Greek takeaway really. Thai takeaway, that's fairly common as well.
Yeah.
Thai from Thailand, perhaps. Mm-hmm. They're the three big ones for me, Chinese, Indian and Thai.
Yeah, they're the main ones. And often you would not necessarily need takeaway after the adjective. You could just use the adjective as a noun. Let's have an Indian today. And the implication is, the meaning is you're having an Indian takeaway. Or let's have a Chinese. So don't expect always to hear takeaway. You could just use the adjective as a noun, an Indian.
Now, a very common expression people use in Britain and America is to grab a bite. To grab a bite. So if you grab something, the original meaning of grab something is to put your hand on it, to get hold of it, quickly. So to grab a bite is the idea of quickly getting something to eat. So it could well be takeaway, or it could be sitting down but eating fast. So quite often when people say, hey, do you want to grab a bite? They're probably referring to fast food or something quick.
And speaking of quick and fast, it's very common in the US to get a takeaway in a drive-through. Through with the British English spelling is THROUGH. But in America, it's common to see through spelled THRU, drive-through. Now, there's a drive-through McDonald's close to where I live. Is that common in Belfast? Do you see many drive-through takeaway restaurants?
There are a few. I would say more than in Valencia. There aren't many here. There's a couple more, but I think it's nothing like in America. In America, there are lots. Yeah, would you agree? Is that your experience from America?
Yeah, I don't think I've been to one in America because I don't usually hire a car. But they are very common, and you see them in movies. Everyone goes and gets a takeaway from a drive-through. And obviously a drive-through is you go in your car, you order the food from your car, and you pay and you collect your food in your car, so you don't need to get out of your car. And maybe you even eat the takeaway in the car, so it's a totally car experience.
It's the sort of thing, to be honest, that only really appeals to me if I'm on a long journey and I've got no other choice. I don't like the idea of having to do it all in my car, but it's a very handy invention if you haven't got much time, that's for sure.
Yep, it's very quick. And also if the weather's very bad, if it's raining heavily and you don't really want to get wet, you can just collect the food and eat it in the car. There are two words that could be confused. One is franchise and one is chain. Now, the difference is, well, I understand a chain as being a different restaurants owned and run, which means managed by the same company. So let's take McDonald's for example. They're a huge multinational company. It's a chain restaurant, which means you can find these restaurants all over the country in many different cities and actually all over the world. However, a franchise is similar, but the person who owns the restaurant and pays some money to the company. So the food is probably the same. The way you buy the food, the customer experience is probably the same, but there's actually a manager who's taking most of the profits and he pays a license fee to the umbrella company. Do you agree with that?
Yes, that's how I understand it. The franchise company, they basically sell the owner of the local restaurant of that franchise the right to sell their product, which of course will be a well-known product. You wouldn't buy the rights to sell an unknown product. So the whole point is it's a product which a lot of people know. It has a good reputation. It's well known. So you buy the right to sell that. You don't have to do any of your own marketing. It's already done for you.
And included in the agreement, in the contract, is the fact that you have to meet the company's standards. So you can't really make many changes. You have to follow the company practice and the company line.
Exactly. That's an important thing you've said. I just think you can't make many changes, but possibly a couple. I have noticed in franchises, occasionally there are ever so slight differences, but I guess things which don't really interfere with the company policy, like the cups they use or something like that, or there's certain types of dish which they don't do in some franchises just because the owner of that franchise has decided it's too awkward or they don't want to do it or something like that. There can be ever so slight changes, right?
Yeah, and sometimes I don't know. I can't tell the difference. I don't know, for example, if Starbucks is a franchise or a chain, or McDonald's or Burger King. I really don't know if they're franchises or chains.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I think these days quite often there's a mixture. Mm-hmm. So I think there are perhaps Starbucks or McDonald's, for example, that are directly managed by the McDonald's company. But then there are others that they franchise. So they have a mixture, I think, very often.
Now, we spoke about the USA with drive-thrus. Another word that's very, very common in the US is a diner, D-I-N-E-R. Now, in British English, a diner can be a person who eats things for dinner. A diner can be a person who has dinner somewhere. But what's the meaning in the US?
An American-style diner is a restaurant, although it tends to be more a restaurant where you eat kind of fast food, or uncomplicated food. So not necessarily fast food, but it could be hamburgers, it could be fried chicken, things like that. It's not going to be anything fancy, so good basic kind of food. That's a diner. So it's kind of half in the territory of fast food, would you say?
Yeah, I would say that it's quite similar to a British cafe. A British cafe would do a good fried breakfast, a bacon sandwich, maybe hamburgers and sausages, lots of food cooked on a griddle, which is a hot plate. And similar in the US, you'd get really good breakfasts. You'd get hamburgers and fast food, but home cooking as well. Maybe homemade apple pie.
It's those places that you see in the films going back for decades where the waiter or waitress comes around and fills up your coffee.
Yes.
I know they've started doing that in some places in Europe now, but it's still not that common. They go around saying, more coffee, or can I get you a refill? That's not so typical in restaurants, but it is typical in diners.
And do you know why it's free? Do you know why you pay once and they keep refilling your cup and give you more?
No? Why is that?
It's terrible coffee. It's absolutely disgusting. It's horrible. It's filter coffee, and I've never, ever had a good cup of coffee in an American diner. It's horrible.
That's true. They like that style in America, don't they? That watery coffee. Ooh.
Yeah, but I'm spoiled. I'm used to Spanish coffee. What's a combo? COMBO.
I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. It's an American concept for me.
Yeah, it's a combination. It's short for combination. So when you go into a fast food restaurant, often you might see a chicken combo, which means you get maybe some chicken nuggets with some chips or French fries if you're in the States, and a drink, like a fizzy drink or a Coke or a Sprite or something. So a combo is a combination, which usually is some kind of food like a hamburger, a hot dog, a chicken sandwich, plus your chips, your French fries, plus a drink. And that's a combo, a combination.
In British English, they might call it a set meal.
Yes.
Although that's a bit confusing because a set meal can also refer to something you would get in a slow food restaurant. Menú del día in Spanish. So a set meal could be in a restaurant. You get this A as your appetizer, then B, you get a meat course, then C, your dessert, and maybe it includes a drink. So that can also be set meal. But when you see set meal in a McDonald's, it's going to mean that the burger comes with chips and there'll be a few varieties. You could have maybe a large portion of chips. It will be a certain price, a small portion. You can have Coke, you can have water. You can vary it a little bit. For me, I would tend to say also set meal for that in the UK.
Yep, exactly.
For me, combo is more American English, would you say?
Yep, I agree. So it will be set meal in the UK and combo in the US. Reza, what would you understand if you were in the US and you heard this sentence? Pastrami on rye, hold the mayo. What does that mean? Pastrami on rye, hold the mayo. Does that mean you're holding something?
It could mean that my mum and dad are asking for a sandwich because that was one of their favorite things to eat when they were on holiday in New York. So it was pastrami on rye. Was that it?
Yes.
Yep. So pastrami, that type of cooked meat, on rye bread. Yeah. Pan de centeno rye, R-Y-E, rye. Hold the mayo.
Hold the mayo. When
you hold something, it means hold back. In other words, don't give it to me. So let's say in an American deli, a delicatessen, the kind of place where the fast food they give you is like sandwiches, but good sandwiches, healthy fast food. Quite often people don't want the sauce which automatically comes with it. So they say, hold the pickle, hold the mayo, and mayo is short for mayonnaise. That was exactly what my parents ate once or twice a day for about 10 days when they were in New York. They had pastrami on rye, hold the mayo. That's exactly what they had.
It's very nice. That's a lovely sandwich, pastrami on rye. Now, mayo or mayonnaise often comes in a sachet, S-A-C-H-E-T. There is a T at the end, but we don't tend to pronounce it, so it's sachet. which I'm guessing is a French word in a similar way as ballet, B-A-L-L-E-T, and we don't pronounce the T because it's French. So sachet. And you get sauces like a brown sauce or a barbecue sauce. They also come sometimes in sachets. So you could ask for a sachet of brown sauce or a sachet of mayonnaise or a sachet of oil if you want oil on your toast, olive oil, a sachet of vinegar for your chips, sachet.
Craig, I have a confession to make.
Go ahead. It's confession time. We should have some special music. Razor's Confessions. Confessions of a podcaster.
I have quite a few sachets in my fridge from various fast food chains, because the way I see it is, I'm in there, I don't really want it, but hey, I paid for it. I'm taking it home, and I do. So I have little sachets with the Mcdonald's logo of ketchup in there. I got HP sauce and stuff, you name it. I've got KFC, mayo, but I have never stolen anything. I bought it, but I don't want to use it. But I think, hey, I don't want it on this meal, but I might want this sauce later. I'm taking it home with me. Do you do it?
I don't do it with sachets, but when I travel, I do it with sugar very often, because I usually have tea or coffee in the hotel room or where I'm staying, and often I have a lot of sugar. I drink a lot of tea and coffee, and they give you 1 or 2 sachets of sugar or packets of sugar, and I usually need more. So whenever I have a coffee outside in a cafe, I take the sugar, which they've given me, it's my sugar, and I take it back to the hotel.
I actually do that as well, but only if it's fancy sugar. If it's just plain white sugar, no, because you can get that anywhere. But if it's like fancy natural cane sugar, I think, oh yeah, that's good, I'll take that.
So you're a secret sachet hoarder.
Oh, but I do use them. It's not that I hoard them and never use them. They do get used. So I virtually never have to buy any ketchup, because, if I slightly against my will end up in McDonald's 5 or 6 times a year, there's my ketchup for the year, because I don't use that much.
Yeah, and they give you like 10 sachets when you buy a hamburger, don't they? Our next word is dip, D-I-P. It's a verb and a noun, and when it's a verb, then you dip your food in a sauce, for example. That's very common if you have a Chinese takeaway. If you have a pancake roll or something similar, you can dip your pancake roll in a sweet and sour sauce. So you're putting the food inside a liquid which has a nice taste. And a dip is something that the food goes into. So you can have a garlic dip. You can have help me, can you think of another dip?
You could use guacamole as a dip or something similar.
Hummus dip.
Yeah, that type of thing. By the way, do you know the Spanish word for to dip?
Mojar?
Dipiar.
Really?
Yeah, they have invented this word, dipiar. It's great. Yeah.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah,
dipiar.
It's quite commonly used now. Boy, dipiar. I thought people were joking, and then I checked it, and it really exists. Dipiar.
Now, in a similar way to dip or dips, we have the word dressing. Now, is that somehow connected to clothes?
So putting your clothes on like a dressing gown?
Dressing?
It could be. If you are dressing, you're putting your clothes on as a verb. But if you want dressing, okay, that's different. Dressing is something that you put on, for example, salad. So you dress the salad. You don't put clothes on it, unless you're a bit weird. You put oil, vinegar, that type of thing on it. So the dressing, and you dress the salad.
A side order is not your main dish. It's food that you have on the side. Let's say, for example, you've ordered a steak. You could ask the waiter for some French fries or some chips on the side, or a salad with an Italian dressing on the side. So it's a side order. And you can have a side order of many things. You can have a side order of salad, chips, vegetables, green beans, whatever.
Craig, you mentioned the word French fries along with chips. I'm sure the listeners already know that British people say chips, Americans say French fries, but I've no idea why Americans say French fries. What's so French about them? Have you any idea why they decided to call what we say chips as French fries?
I have no idea, but I do remember during the Gulf War when France were against George Bush's foreign policy, there was this huge outcry in America against French fries, and they started to call them freedom fries. Do you remember that? Do you remember that?
It's true. I do remember
Freedom
that.
fries, because French was a bad word, but that didn't catch on. That means it wasn't adopted, it wasn't accepted in the language, in American English, so you still see French fries on the menu.
It's curious, isn't it? Because I identify France a lot with good, slow food. It's strange that this very common side order of fast food should get French added to it, French fries, because the French are not known for fast food. They're known for slow food.
That's true. The Belgians are known for French fries because it's the national dish of Belgium, but France, not so much.
Maybe that's it. It could be that. Maybe they mistook the Belgians for French since they speak the same language, and they thought, oh, the French eat them. Could be that.
Speaking of chips, what about fish and chips? The original UK takeaway food. Who hasn't had fish and chips when you visit the UK? And it's still possible to get fish and chips in paper when you take it away. Now, not in newspaper. I remember fish and chips in newspaper when I was very, very young, a boy growing up in London. But obviously, with the print coming off onto the food, not a great idea to put greasy food into newspaper, but they do still serve fish and chip takeaways in paper.
Yeah, and I love it like that. For me, that's my favorite way to have it as takeaway. Not newspaper, but special paper they have for it. I love that. It soaks up the oil. If you put vinegar on it, it has a very particular smell. And I have very, very, very fond memories of having to drive a little bit, like 5-10 minutes. We were a bit lazy, to our nearest takeaway in the car with my dad. And he sent me in with the money to get the takeaway, fish and chips, and then come back in the car in winter, so the windows cold. And the smell
in the car.
Wow, of fish and chips.
The vinegar.
Vinegar coming from the paper. It's a very particular smell. And believe me, it's a heavenly smell if you're a young boy. There are no better smells than that.
And I think it's one of the small pleasures of life, and I've had many fish and chips in my life, but one that really stands out as being the classic was in Kilkenny in the south of Ireland. I went there on holiday. It was a very, very cold day, and walking around the streets of a city that I didn't know, eating this wonderful fish and chips out of paper, and it's lovely and hot, and on a cold day, walking around the streets, it was the perfect meal.
Another thing which is almost as popular, if not more popular than fish and chips in the UK today, is a doner kebab.
And it's usually served in pita bread. And what I've noticed here in Spain is that, well, the British English spelling that I grew up with was Kebab, kebab. However, I've seen it written here with a P at the end. And it's strange to me that there's a completely different spelling in Spain. Have you noticed that?
That's the original Turkish spelling.
Ah, is it?
In Turkish, it ends with a P.
So it's misspelled in the UK?
Yeah, well, we adopted that.
Yeah.
Strange. So the Turkish word is kebab.
Okay.
With a P at the end.
Interesting.
I say Turkish, don't want to offend any listeners. It's just as Greek as it is Turkish. So that's the Turkish word we've adopted into English and Spanish language, but it's a very, very typical thing to eat in Greece, just as it is in Turkey as well.
Mm-hmm. And very, very good. I've had one there. It's fantastic. We've spoken about hamburgers. That's sometimes shortened to a burger. Be careful of the pronunciation. Burger, hamburger. If there is cheese inside, of course, it's a cheeseburger. And if you are vegetarian, you can get a veggie burger. Veggie. A veggie burger is vegetarian.
Do you like veggie burgers, Craig?
No, I prefer hamburgers.
I like both, although I eat more hamburgers, but a really good veggie burger is nice. But what I really hate are these veggie burgers which try to taste like a meat hamburger.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
No, me neither.
So you get like this soya protein stuff and things like that, and corn, which is supposed to taste like meat. I like the ones that taste of vegetables. I like veggie burgers made out of things like chickpeas and spinach and vegetables all mushed up. They can taste quite nice.
Yeah, that's not bad, but I understand why they try to imitate meat, because if you are a vegetarian, maybe for ideological reasons, maybe you miss the taste of meat. So, yeah, you don't want to eat the meat, but you want something similar. I understand that.
Now, Craig, at the end of this podcast, we might say, it's a wrap. But if I'm talking about food and I say, hey, that's a wrap, what am I talking about?
A wrap, W-R-A-P. Now, when it's your birthday or Christmas time, you wrap presents, which means you put the paper outside the gift or the present. And in a similar way, you can take very thin bread and you can wrap food in this bread. And that is a wrap. So you can have many different types of fillings inside the wrap. And you can buy this as fast food in supermarkets and other sandwich shops. So you might have a chicken wrap, or a vegetarian wrap, or a pastrami wrap. Have you had one of those?
I have, yeah. And what if I say it's a wrap when we finish podcasting? What am I talking about?
It's over. It's finished. The end.
I guess it's the idea of, like, imagine it was an actual physical product. You can wrap it up now. It's ready to go. Yeah, although it's not a physical product, but people say that expression, and I guess that's where it comes from.
I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to know where that comes from. It could be from the cinema when you wrap up a film and they say it's a wrap.
Could be.
You're wrapping up the film. You're wrapping. It's a. You can finish a meeting by saying, "Okay, it's a wrap. We're finished." So anything that's finished or done, over, you can say that's a wrap. It's a wrap.
Craig, pizza, I don't need to explain. Everybody's heard of that in the whole world. But if I were to talk about the toppings on your pizza, what am I talking about?
What goes on top of the pizza? What's your favourite topping?
I wouldn't say I have a favourite. I tell you what I don't like, pineapple.
No, I don't think many sane people do.
I think most Italians are right when they say that it probably should be a crime. You should be taken to the International Criminal Court if you serve pizza with pineapple for insulting the entire Italian culture.
Very difficult to understand. I like my pizzas plain and simple. I like just cheese on the pizza, margherita, or maybe occasionally some anchovies if I'm feeling adventurous.
And do you ever get extras?
Sometimes I get extra cheese. I like 4 cheese pizzas. I like some meat, but usually it's just a plain cheese pizza.
I like pepperoni on mine. Quite often I will get whatever combination of toppings they're offering, and then I add pepperoni. My mouth's watering just thinking about it now.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry too. Of course, you can have takeaway food, fast food as a main meal, but sometimes you just feel a little bit hungry, but not very hungry. I can say you feel peckish, P-E-C-K-I-S-H, and maybe you just want a snack, S-N-A-C-K. It's a verb and a noun, so you can have a mid-morning snack, a mid-afternoon snack, or you can snack. I'm just having this pizza slice as a snack, or to snack, S-N-A-C-K.
Now, with a snack or with fast food in general, it's very, very common to have a soft drink. In other words, it doesn't have alcohol in it. Well, you can have a beer as well, of course, but a soft drink, it won't have alcohol, and it will have gas in it. It will be a fizzy drink. F-I-Z-Z-Y. It has fizz. It's fizzy. Think of the word. I'm going to exaggerate a bit. Fizzy. Can you hear it? Sounds a bit like gas. So, like we often do in English, we've invented a word which kind of sounds a bit like what it's representing. Fizzy. Yeah? You can imagine the gas bubbling.
And if it's not fizzy, you could ask for still, S-T-I-L-L. So you could have a fizzy orange with gas or a still orange. There's that joke where someone goes into a fast food restaurant, orders a hamburger and says, and I'll have orange juice. And the waiter says, still? And the customer said, yep, I haven't changed my mind. Because still can mean not fizzy and still can mean todavía in Spanish. Like I still want it. I do want it. I haven't changed my mind. It's still true. Reza, how often do you eat fast food on average?
Let me see. I would say about once a month, perhaps. What about you?
About the same, yeah. And I tend to have fast food when I travel. It's just easier sometimes. You don't know where to go. You don't know a good restaurant. And you know that the quality of fast food is reliable. Now, that doesn't mean it's high quality food. It means that it probably won't change from country to country. If you have a McDonald's in Spain, it's very similar to a McDonald's in another country.
Yeah, you know what you're getting at least.
And in an expensive country, it's usually quite cheap.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
If you designed your own burger, Reza, what would it look like?
Oh, well, I do love making burgers, actually. I love a really good homemade burger.
How do you make it?
I change it a bit depending what kind of mood I'm in, how the fancy takes me. But apart from the meat, it will be with onions for sure. Sometimes I fry the onions. Sometimes I have them raw. If they're raw, they'll be red onions. Raw means not cooked. A little bit of pickle in there. I know a lot of people don't like it. I do. Pickle. HP sauce. Good British sauce. You won't get that in America.
Is that from your secret stash of sachets in the fridge or a bottle?
Actually, I have to go and buy the bottle because here in Spain, nobody gives you HP sauce. So I'm forced to buy that, unfortunately. In Carrefour, you can buy it, by the way. So HP sauce. And quite often, here's my master stroke, quite often I also put a little bit of ketchup. So HP sauce and a little bit of ketchup mixed and a little bit of mustard. Yeah. Cheese. And a little bit of lettuce, not too much, and a slice or two of tomato. So nothing too fancy, just that. What about yours?
Sounds good. I'm quite plain, so I don't like pickle, I don't like mustard, I don't like tomato ketchup. I like good quality beef or meat in the hamburger with cheese and bacon. And maybe a little bit of lettuce and tomato, but that's it. Cheese and bacon with my hamburger.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like bacon. Yeah, that adds a nice little touch. The meat, what meat do you use?
I don't tend to make them myself. As you know, I can't really cook. I'm a terrible cook. But I do like going to good quality like hamburger restaurants, not necessarily fast food restaurants like McDonald's or Burger King. But I went to one 2 weeks ago here in Valencia that was very, very good. And it was Angus beef. And it wasn't that expensive. The whole meal was something like 10, 11 euros and a really good hamburger.
Are you telling me you've never made your own burger? But it's dead easy to make a burger, Craig.
Yeah, I don't have patience, really.
You just get the meat and put it in your hands and flatten it a bit and there you go.
Yeah, maybe one day you can make one for me.
Oh, I will. It's going to be good, eh? Because, by the way, I don't buy minced meat, or as Americans would say, ground beef. So to mince or to grind, an irregular ground, is to picar, to cut the meat into tiny little pieces so you can make a hamburger. Minced or ground beef. No. I'm like a fussy Spaniard. I say to the butcher, I want a bit of that meat, A, 80%, and a bit of B, mix them together
clever.
in the machine.
Yeah.
And like many Spanish people, I will go for about 80%, 70% beef, 20, 30% pork.
Because the pork gives it the flavour.
The flavour,
and
the
it's
fat.
not so dry.
Exactly. So that's what I do. And I don't buy the meat already minced. I have the butcher mince it before my eyes so I know what I'm getting. So you'll be impressed with my burger if I make you one. Eh?
I'm sure I will. Did you notice how Reza used the causative there? To have the meat minced. He doesn't mince it himself. He has it minced. Have you ever worked in a fast food restaurant?
No, but I did apply for one and I was turned down. It's one of kind of the low points in my life. I was living in Berlin. I was very young and I needed money. I was running out of money and I had no place to live except friends' houses. So I applied to McDonald's for a job. They turned me down.
Did they say why?
My German wasn't good enough and they just thought I was a bit dumb. So I was turned down by McDonald's. I really was. They rejected me.
So you were the original Johnny No Stars. Well, I was accepted. When I was 16, I got a summer job in McDonald's near where I lived in London, and I really enjoyed it. It was an interesting job, quite hard work and very hot and very sweaty, but I made some money and it helped me with my studies, and I had McDonald's every day for 6 weeks.
By the way, the big question, McDonald's or Burger King? Have you got a preference?
I like McDonald's because I think I had a lot of McDonald's growing up and Burger King wasn't so common. So probably if I had to choose, I'd choose McDonald's. What about you?
Neither. I prefer to make my own. I occasionally have one, but I can't see much difference, to be honest. Yeah.
By the way, if you'd like to sponsor the podcast, you'd have to argue with Reza. But if McDonald's is listening, get in touch. We'll be more than happy to consider your offer.
Or Burger King, we're not fussy.
Or KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Coca-Cola, Pepsi, either. One more question, Craig. What will be more popular in the future, 20 years' time, say? Fast food or slow food?
I think fast food will be predominantly or mainly insects. I think there'll be a meat shortage. And I think that we'll be eating more insects. So we'll grab a snack of fried ants in newspaper and we'll eat them walking along the street. What do you think?
I think we will be eating more ants, yeah.
And insects, yeah. Beetles.
And things, spiders, whatever.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Crickets.
But I think traditional fast food will survive as well. I think people will still be eating kebabs and burgers and things. And I hope fish and chips because I love that.
Yep.
That's what I think.
And now it's your turn to practice your English. Now, if you don't practice, you won't improve. So we'd love you to send us a voice message and tell us what your favourite fast food is. What do you like to grab when you're out and about and you need a quick snack? Let us know. Send your voice messages to speakpipe.com. That's speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. And of course, there's a link in the show notes at inglespodcast.com. Reza, how can people contact us by email?
Well, you could write, if you prefer, you could write to Craig. You'll find him at craig@inglespodcast.com, or you could write to me, belfastreza@gmail.com.
And if you're looking for a paid course to improve your English, go to the Mansion Ingles store. You can find that at store.mencioningles.net. And if you want to practice your speaking, I will be opening another conversation masterclass very soon. So join the waiting list, go and sign up at English Masterclass. And as soon as I have a date for the next course, then I will be in touch by email.
As always, we'd like to thank all of you who support us through the Patreon scheme. Patreon, that's Patreon. If you're interested in joining the scheme, it costs as little as $1.20 per month to give a donation. And as a thank you for people who give the donation, we will give you access to recent audio transcriptions. So if you'd like to join, have a look at the link in the show notes. It's patreon.com/Inglespodcast. And we'd very much appreciate your help.
Before we go, we'd like to welcome our new Patreon supporters who have joined us this month. Of course, we thank all of you who continue to support us every month on Patreon. We really do appreciate your help. But we'd like to say a special thank you to Juan Lopez, Manuel Roman, Fabiola Clavero Fran Otero, Manme Diaz, Chema Lopez Bellido, Isabel M., and Luisa de Valle Arias, who very generously has donated more than the minimum $1 per month. Thank you to all of you for recently joining us on Patreon, and thank you to all of our lovely Patreon supporters. What's next week, Reza?
Next week, we've got a children's story.
Well, if you do have children, or if you want to listen to Reza and I being just a little bit silly, join us next week for that. Thank you for listening today. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please let your friends know where they can find it. Until next time, it's goodbye from Reza.
And it's goodbye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pids. The track is called See You Later.